In this video, I'm going to tell you about the 3 devastating mistakes that almost 100% of parents make when trying to help their child with dyslexia. Chances are you are already making these mistakes. Then I'm going to tell you the 3 strategies that you must know in order to overcome dyslexia. Dyslexia can affect every aspect of a person's life. It's not just problems in school. How would you like me to show you the simple method I've used to help hundreds of children and adults overcome dyslexia? Overcoming dyslexia makes so many things in life much easier. Sure, there's the obvious things like simply being able to enjoy reading, but there is more. Great! I'm glad your desire is strong to help your child. But before we continue, I'd like to ask a favor. Is that okay? I'd like to ask you to take the time to watch this entire video. It's about 50 minutes long, and it has the information you absolutely need. If you do me the favor of watching this entire video, I promise to deliver this information as quickly and efficiently as possible because we both want to help your child. Hi, I'm Liz Weaver, and I've helped hundreds, maybe even thousands of children and adults overcome dyslexia. And here are the things you need to know to do the same. So let's get to it. Let's understand what the 3 critical mistakes are that most parents make so you don't make those. Mistake number 1, pouring on more homework, more tutoring, more academic help. That's exactly what most people do, and it's a recipe for disaster. Let me help you understand why. What is your greatest fear? Fear of creepy crawly things like spiders or snakes? Fear of heights? Maybe social fears such as looking stupid in public or public speaking? Whatever it is, I want you to imagine what it would be like if you had to face that fear every single day. Now, who do you love? And who do you want love from? Obviously, your child, your spouse, your family. What if you thought that to get that love, you had to face that fear every day? That if you didn't overcome that fear on a daily basis, they would stop loving you? Well, that's sort of what it's like for your child. Their greatest fear is looking stupid in front of you. In a lot of cases, they begin to think that they are stupid, and they are terrified of you finding out. Well, what you know and I know is that your child is actually quite intelligent, probably above average. But that doesn't matter. It's what they perceive. It's the messages they get from teachers and peers. Those messages get inside their heads and they begin to think they're different. They begin to think they lack intelligence. And when you give them more and more homework, or you hire that special tutor, or send them to that special learning center, to them, that's just more and more opportunities for their greatest fear to emerge. Can you imagine the anxiety that might cause? And here's the deal. When we have anxiety, fear, our brains shut down. It's a biological response. Learning becomes impossible. Reason goes out the window. That tricky little part of the brain, it's called the amygdala, it takes over. And when the amygdala is in charge, the rest of the brain does exactly what it says. The amygdala rules the house, and all the amygdala wants is out. Most parents and teachers don't understand this. I understand that parents, you're just trying to help. You want what's best for your child. But without knowing it, you're creating anxiety. If you might have already done this, it's not your fault. It's just that nobody taught you about how powerful the amygdala can be. Which brings us to mistake number 2. So, if the amygdala is in charge and it wants out of the situation, it's going to find a way. It does this through avoidance techniques, and believe me, it's creative. Avoidance techniques can be varied, and they come in all different forms, but there are typical avoidance techniques I see a lot. So let's go back to that greatest fear. What was it again for you? Spiders? Snakes? Heights? Public speaking? Now imagine that you knew that every time you had to do some common everyday task, maybe like taking a shower, that thing you feared would be in there. A creepy crawly would come out of the drain, or the shower was on the edge of a 10,000-foot cliff, or there would be people watching you. How often do you think you'd want to take a shower? Do you think maybe you'd let that stink go a little longer than normal? Probably. And then maybe people might start to assume that you were just a stinky, dirty person. But truth be told, you might find people thinking you were stinky easier to deal with than getting in that scary shower. Well, that's pretty much how kids think. They'd rather be thought of as lazy or a troublemaker. They'd rather disrupt the lesson or be known as an underachiever than actually face their greatest fear. Teachers make that mistake all the time. They brand kids with labels: lazy, class clown, underachiever, immature. What happens next is even worse. Kids actually start to believe these labels and become them. They can develop what's called learned helplessness. Once this starts, everything gets worse and the problem is harder to solve. It's very sad, and over I've heard stories of this condition persisting into adulthood. Adults who have never had someone step in and get them through this become perpetual underachievers. Most can't hold a job for very long. They become socially awkward because they feel different, and the dyslexia perpetuates that. Often they can't communicate well because they simply can't process auditory information due to something we'll cover later and is fixable. And they get behind in conversations. Once they think of what to say, the conversation has moved on, which just creates more social awkwardness. The ironic thing is that most of them actually love communicating. But I digress. Let's get to mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is letting other people tell you what's best for your child. There are many types of experts, and most of them are all very well-meaning. Some just have ulterior motives or just want to make things easy on themselves, and that might not always be the best thing for your child. Experts come in many forms: a teacher, school counselor, a specialist, a tutor, a learning center director, or even a family member, such as a mother-in-law. It's easy to give into these experts' authority, and it's easy to let them tell us what to do, but it's not always best. We already talked about how well-meaning teachers can pour on the homework. Often they may tell you that your child isn't living up to their potential. Well, I've never seen a child that didn't want to live up to their potential. Like anyone else, kids want to be good at things. They want to do their best. It's only when something else is wrong that they don't. You may have been taught that remedial work, remedial classes, or even an IEP is best for your child. Maybe it is, but maybe it's just the best thing for the school or the best thing for the classroom. You do know that schools get more money for these special classes than IEPs, right? The problem with experts is they are experts in their area of expertise. They sometimes have a myopic view of things and can't see the whole picture. And from what I have found, there is a much bigger picture to all of this than most of these experts see. The truth is, only you, armed with the right knowledge, can make the best decision for your child. You are the parent, and nobody knows better than you. Now, I'm not saying ignore them. That wouldn't be a good idea. Ask for their opinion. Get their experience and their expertise. Be gracious for it. But if it doesn't fit in with what you know in your heart is best for your child, simply thank them and move on. Only you know what's best for your child. I've seen way too many parents do what the experts told them to do, only to regret it later on in life. Some of these decisions not only have far-reaching consequences, but also have immediate consequences. Did you know that kids that are labeled as learning disabled are far more likely to be bullied? They have more social problems. Parents often later feel guilt for having wrote off their child's academic potential too soon, or they feel like they may have been unkind for thinking or punishing their child for being lazy or not trying hard enough at school or not doing their homework. And when parents go through that, they often look back and say they knew there was something not right all along but couldn't put their finger on it. Then they get angry at teachers and schools who thought they knew best but ignored parental questioning. Parents blame themselves later on for not believing in themselves. The schools are not designed to help. It's hard to know where to get help. And if you're dealing with the school system, they just truly are not designed to handle the problem. They may not even recognize it. Think about this and you'll understand why. Schools are designed to teach academics, and this is not an academic problem. But somehow they think more academics will help, more homework will help, more drills. Since when was more the answer to too much? Dyslexia can affect so much of your life. Homework takes forever. Your child might even fight you over it. And of course, this cuts into your time. You probably have little time for anything else, no time for fun family events, or heaven forbid, a little bit of time for yourself. I know, I used to have to deal with these problems, and I know it's tough. I wanted so much from my daughter. I had big aspirations of her having a better life, but those dreams were being crushed. I just couldn't see getting past the problems she was having in school. And when I was always so exhausted, we worked hard at homework and trying to find a solution. It wore me out. Maybe it's the same for you. Is your child incredibly intelligent? Do you see the incredible intelligence in your child and then can't understand why he or she is not doing well in school? Are you worried that it may affect their entire future? I mean, how will they ever get into a decent college or go on to a successful career? And without that, how will they ever be independent? And then there's the mixed emotions. I know you love your child, but do you get angry when they seem lazy and drag out or avoid homework? Getting emotional is exhausting and it carries over into every part of your day. Does it affect your relationships? Does it affect your relationship with your child? Sometimes it may even affect your relationship with your spouse. In a lot of households, it affects everyone, including, maybe especially, other children. Some people get angry that their child has to suffer. It just doesn't seem fair. Your child struggles with things that should be easy, and because of that, misses out on other things. With so little time, sports or social activities are sometimes out of the question. And who wants to take that away from a child? They need those social activities. It's part of growing up. You don't want them to not develop socially. It's hard to find a balance when there's no time left over. Does it affect your child socially? Although I will say that most, not all, but most dyslexics are extremely social in nature. It's a tool they use to hide their problem. They learn to hide their problem by being extroverts, the class clown, getting involved in creative activities. They do develop great qualities, just for the wrong reasons. They are actually highly intelligent, and it's very likely they're using that intelligence as a way to hide their problem. They are afraid that other people will see them as dumb, so they get extremely creative at covering up the problem. Sometimes they go the other way. Sometimes they crawl into a hole because their self-esteem is damaged. Maybe the kids tease them because they stumbled over reading something aloud, or they were taken out of class to go to their special class, or simply because they don't want you to see them as dumb. Does report card time stress you out? Do you start to get worried when it's getting close to report card time or parent-teacher conferences? Or listening to that parent with the star child brag? Do you hate hearing that your child is not performing to their potential? I so wanted to blame the school. I wanted to blame the teachers. I wanted someone to fix this for me. You'd think the school system would be there to help them perform at their potential, but they just aren't for a dyslexic child. Even if teachers were trained in dealing with the real problem, they still would not be able to. Our school system does not allow for it. Here in the U.S., schools are mandated to focus on preparing students for standardized testing. It's all about the testing. If testing is going to be a problem, they push a child for remediation, not fixing the actual problem. Remediation does not do anything to help a child succeed. Have you tried a learning center? Well, if the school can't do it, the professionals can, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe you've looked into those learning centers that you've seen or heard about on the radio. If so, then you know how expensive they are. $500 a month or more, and they're going to nail you for a lot of other expenses. There are a couple of problems with those that are much bigger than the expense. Most learning or tutoring centers are just more of the same, more academics. If that worked for your child, then your child would already be doing fine in school. Not only does it not work, it can actually do harm. The other big problem with the popular centers is that the dyslexia programs they have are based on ancient technology. Most are based on Orton Gillingham program from the 30s. While there are some good things in that program, there are concepts that are just wrong, and they don't do anything to take advantage of the new discoveries in brain science. But you know, they've got a business model that's been extracting a lot of money from a lot of people for a lot of years, and that still works, so why change? Parenting is tough. It's really hard. But parenting and dealing with this is so much harder. How can you be expected to know what to do? You can't. The answers are difficult to find. And how will you know when you've found the right one? It's a jungle out there. It's hard finding the right answers. And one reason for that is it wasn't until recently anyone even had those answers. For many parents, this problem can go unsolved for a long time. Most of the time, parents never find the right solution, and that makes me sad. They often go down all the wrong paths. But there is an answer. If I could show you how you, as the parent, can help your child overcome dyslexia, would you do it? Of course you would. If it took you 15 to 20 minutes a day to solve this problem, would you do it? I think you would. Let me tell you how I stumbled onto the answer. It's kind of a strange story, but I'm very grateful that it happened. Let me go back, well, about 18 years. Ready? Okay. Back then, I taught Kung Fu. I actually still do. I love it. One day, a man came into the studio to sign up his daughter. His name was Jack Pickens. I actually have no idea if she had any type of learning disability or not. I never asked. What I do know is she could sure learn Kung Fu. Stay with me here. When a parent enrolls a child in my Kung Fu class, I always start up a conversation to ask the parent what they want to get out of the program. It's just a way for me to keep improving the program. These discussions are normally pretty standard: self-defense, discipline, self-esteem, all the great stuff that comes from learning Kung Fu. But Jack was different, and I have never had a discussion like the one I had with Jack since. When I asked what he wanted for his daughter, he said, cross-lateral motion. Huh? I didn't know him well at the time. I also didn't have any idea what he was talking about. I didn't know if he was some sort of freak, so I let it go. But I was curious, so the next time I saw him, I asked again, and this time he explained it more. Turns out, he wasn't a freak. In fact, he was an elementary school principal. Jack had been in education for over 40 years, and over those 40 years, he had observed some amazing things. So he explained to me the importance of cross-lateral motion and how it helps develop learning ability. He then went on to explain that all learning is related to the body, not just the mind. That creating a strong mind-body connection enhanced many aspects of learning. He taught me about the importance of developing eye-hand coordination, that without this, kids would always struggle. That without teaching them how to control their eyes and strengthen the eye muscles, they would always have difficulty in reading. That without connecting their brains and their bodies, they would have trouble in school. As a side note, when Jack was talking about the eyes, he was not talking about the ability to focus the eyes. It was about the ability to keep them stable so they can track a line. It's called visual tracking, and it's a critical skill in reading and also in math. If the skill is weak, this is one of the things that causes letters to move around on the page, which is how a dyslexic sometimes sees them. Turned out, Jack was a great guy, incredibly smart and knowledgeable, and a great school principal. Over the next few years, I started getting a lot of parents showing up at my Kung Fu school. They were parents of children with dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, ADD, and ADHD. Every one of them said, Jack sent them. Now, he was one of those guys that you either loved him or hated him. He was a straight shooter, and that doesn't always sit well. But when a person took his advice, that person always benefited from it. As an elementary school principal, Jack saw all the kids that were getting in trouble or having trouble with school. I had a few chances to watch him interact with them. The kids loved him, but they also respected him, and because of that, they did what he asked. When a child was having a problem, whether it was academic or disciplinary, he knew that it was almost always that child acting out to cover up something else. Kids want to do well. No child doesn't. They just don't always know they can. Jack would sit the parents down and tell them, listen, your child is having a problem and I'm going to be honest. We can help as much as possible, but the school is not equipped to give your child everything he needs. He would tell them that although it was not their fault, finding a way to help their child was their responsibility. Some of the parents got mad at this. They felt it was the school's responsibility. The ones that didn't get mad, Jack sent to me. Pretty soon, I had classes full of kids with dyslexia and, of course, a lot of kids with ADHD. It was funny at times because I usually started class by saying, right leg back fighting stance, and the kids went in all directions. But we got through it, and the kids did better. They learned directionality. They developed cross-lateral motions. They developed proprioception, which is the awareness of your body in space. And they started doing better in school. It turns out something else was happening. I don't know if Jack knew about it. He was a very smart man, but at that time, the brain scientists didn't even know about it. I'll tell you what it was in a few minutes. So let's fast forward a bit. The story probably would have ended there, but it didn't. Years later, my own daughter started having trouble in school. Reading was difficult. Reading comprehension was non-existent, and her handwriting was terrible. I was devastated. Fortunately for me, she had been dying to start learning Kung Fu, so we started training her. I had so many kids do so much better after training in Kung Fu, I knew it would help. I also knew it couldn't be the whole solution. I wanted to do everything I possibly could, and I wanted to give Jeanette every chance I could. So I researched, and then I researched some more. I found out that it was essential to not push academics. Too much academics could just cause more problems. Problems such as an overly fatigued student. Students who are overly fatigued just don't learn well. Anxiety. When a student continually has problems and more homework is pushed on them, they develop anxiety. Anxiety is a stress reaction, kind of like going into flight or fight mode, and we do not learn in that condition. Diminished self-esteem. When a student continually struggles, they begin to develop low self-esteem. They start to assume that they're stupid, and once this happens, the road has just gotten tougher. Fortunately for Jeanette, we avoided these problems. I had seen so many parents make these mistakes in the past, I was able to get right on track right away. Now, there were a couple of other skills I had that ended up being absolutely essential. Let me tell you about them. Kung Fu is really hard to learn. It's a struggle for everyone. So it takes some extreme teaching skills that are universal. The first of those skills is the ability to motivate. Did you know that certain motivational statements can backfire? Things like saying, good job, all the time. In a situation where you are dealing with self-esteem issues, saying good job or you're really good at that can actually create anxiety because the student will be afraid they can't perform as well the next time. When self-esteem is low, they attribute the good job to a fluke and worry about the next time. So instead of that, it's best to praise the effort instead. This allows you to slowly help build self-esteem, but not risk anxiety. Luckily, I knew this from all my years of training people in Kung Fu. Another important skill is to break things down to their smallest part. Turns out that for learning, these smallest parts are not about learning how to read or write. These are actually the skills that allow us to learn to read and write. Things like visual or auditory discrimination, or visual or auditory memory, but we're going to talk more about those later. And the last part is challenging the student, but at the same time, setting them up for success. When you can do this, they very quickly develop confidence in themselves. When they build confidence, they can eagerly take on greater and greater challenges. Pretty soon, you're going to have a dynamo on your hands. So that's my strategy number 1. Learn to motivate by using proper language. Break things down to the smallest possible steps. And challenging, but setting the student up for success. Strategy 2 is building up the small components of learning. This is critical to understand. There are actually 16 small skills that make up the ability to learn. These are visual tracking, visual memory, visual closure, visual discrimination, perceptual and spatial skills, auditory memory, working memory, memory manipulation, visual motor integration, cross-lateral movement, large muscle movement, directionality, eye-hand coordination, auditory closure, auditory discrimination, and following oral directions. I know this sounds like a lot, but don't worry. They are actually very simple to work on, and most of the exercises we work on will do several at once. It might sound scary, but trust me, I've made it super easy. When a child is having trouble with learning, it is always some combination of 2 or more of these skills. With dyslexia, it is most often visual tracking, visual discrimination, and strangely, auditory discrimination, as well as directionality, of course. Dyslexia is a blanket term, and all dyslexics are different, so you never know exactly which combination it is. But it is easy to find out. You just do the exercises. So there are plenty of exercises for these skills. They've been around for a long time. As a matter of fact, if you search the internet and look through a lot of old teaching books, you'll find these exercises. It's just a matter of putting the correct ones together in the correct order and developing a program, which I did. And that brings us to strategy 3. Back when I was working with so many kids who had dyslexia and other learning problems, I discovered the secret sauce. The exercises that build up these skills are good, and they are used by many educational therapists. But without the secret I learned, it is slow going, and it might not even work. Because we have to prime the brain for learning, which I'm going to tell you how to do right now. This is the big secret, the one recently discovered by brain scientists. So why doesn't anyone use it? Well, it's because up until just a few years ago, the scientists had it backwards. They made a mistake. Now that they've actually figured it out, it makes the secret sauce possible. Let me tell you what I mean. I don't know if you remember this, but when I was in school, I learned that our brains did not develop past a certain age. Do you remember learning that? Well, it wasn't true. The scientists had it wrong. It happens, but they finally figured it out. You can't blame them. The brain is a wonderfully complex thing. Scientists still don't know a lot about it, but they know enough about it to make this solution work. What they discovered is the brain actually does have plasticity. This means it grows and develops at any age, but only under certain conditions. It turns out that the brain actually only develops new neurons at certain times and under certain conditions, and these new neurons will die off if they are not used right away. That's why the scientists missed it. They never caught them in the act, until recently. So it turns out that new neurons grow when the body is doing, guess what? Cross-lateral motion. Who knew? What happens is when a child learns how to coordinate their body in a new way, and that new way involves cross-lateral motion, it triggers brain development. Yay, we get smarter. Well, almost. What happens is if these new neurons don't get used right away, they die, but if they get used, they stay. Did you get that? We can prime the brain for learning. It's like a magic button that turns the brain on and says, time to learn. But that's not all these cross-lateral motions do. Cross-lateral motions balance the brain hemispheres. Children who suffer from a learning problem are almost always right brain dominant. This is why they're so creative. That right hemisphere, the creative side, is a powerhouse. The problem is, it just plain overpowers the left side. It doesn't let the left side do its work. The left side is needed for things like reading and math and solving problems. But with such a powerful right brain, dyslexic kids can't access the left side. It's like the left brain is always hanging out with its big, loud, extroverted friend, and that friend won't let it get a word in edgewise, so it just hangs out and does nothing, and nobody notices it. The left brain becomes a wallflower. Here's the second part of the secret. Cross-lateral motions cause the brain hemispheres to keep switching control. You might know that the right side of your body is controlled by your left brain, correct? But did you know this? When you cross your right arm to your left side, it is then controlled by your right brain. Yep, it switches control to the opposite hemisphere. Well, guess what happens when you learn and repeat body motions that have a lot of cross-lateral motion? You guessed it, you balance the brain. Simply by learning how to move your body in a new way, you balance the brain hemispheres. That the left brain no longer has to be the shy friend that never has any fun. The left brain can stand up and show its strength. It was there all along. It just needed a little help. Pretty neat, huh? So how did we figure this out? Let's go back a little bit. What was happening with the Kung Fu kids I was training is that they would come right after school to my class. It just so happened, time-wise, it worked out they came here right after school. Then they would go home and do their homework. When their brain was fully primed and ready to go, we were priming the pump and we didn't even know it, but we were getting them ready to learn. Go figure. Well, after we figured this out, we learned that we could do an even better job. We learned there were actually only a few important motions to learn. They didn't have to learn all of Kung Fu, although it is fun. They just had to learn the motions that had a lot of cross-lateral motion in them. We learned that there were only a few important motions for them to learn. They didn't have to be black belts. When they learned these motions, they created a stronger mind-body connection. It connected the eyes, the brain, and the body. Once this happened, learning and skill development became easy. So it came down to this, the three important components. Let's go over them quickly. Brain, eyes, body connection. This is essential for developing learning skills. Not only that, but it builds up the brain. Balancing the brain. Most kids are right brain dominant. We need to help that left hemisphere do its work by balancing things out. Build up the 16 components of learning. These are the smaller skills that make up the learning process. A weakness in any one of these skills will cause a student to struggle. Most dyslexics have a weakness in at least 2 or 3. So, I put this whole thing into a program, an easy program you can do at home with your child. This program builds up the basic components of learning. It balances the brain. It creates a strong brain, eyes, body connection, and it's easy. These are simple exercises you can do at home. They are so simple, some of them are like games that your kids play. Your child might even consider them games. Let one of my happy customers tell you how they feel about the program.
Okay. So how are the programs going? How does he like the lesson?
He was there like about 4 weeks ago. He totally refused. I mean, he just screamed and kicked, and he was just a mess. And then I talked with his tutor at school. I said, it's just not going, and it's, yeah, I know it was three evenings. I just could not get anything done. You know, if he didn't do it, he just didn't. I mean, you couldn't do much about it. Right. And then she said, okay. She said that, okay, we'll do it like this. If he don't do it, he has to stay a half hour after school and do it with her. And that, just like that, I mean, he was like, he's not going to stay a half hour after school every day.
So he would do it.
He's doing great.
You had to find a way to motivate him.
Yeah. I mean, the tutor said, I think he's just trying to overrule you. And that's what he was trying to do, but what can you do? Yeah. And he was frustrated, and he was, like, he started doing it nice for me because he didn't want to stay after school.
So now he's, okay, so I got it. So you need, okay, so she gave him the incentive.
He didn't want to stay after school.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So how is he doing with the lessons now that he's doing them?
He's doing great.
Good.
Like he can do them. That's why once he did it, he was great. I mean, like he can do it fast. Like I can show him, the dots, the visual recall, and he can do it just like that, better than we can. So I know the tutor said that she's just so amazed these last few weeks that he's doing very good. No, he says it's helping him. He actually admits it. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Does his tutor see any improvement in how he's doing at school?
Yeah, she said his reading is going like a whole lot faster than it did last year. Problem was he wasn't getting his work done, so he was being frustrated, and he had just a little bit of this dyslexia, something. And then the teacher said this last while he's getting his lessons done, and they're right too. So. Okay.
I love that your tutor is keeping in touch with you.
I know. She's very much into this. She's like, she thinks it makes a difference in children. So I know she said some of her other parents, they say, oh, that's just stupid exercises. I mean, that don't help. And she's just glad we want to help our son that he can, read and stuff like that. And she said some of them have too much pride. They have too much pride to admit that their child does need more.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right, and it's too bad for the child. You have to really focus and do what's best for your child.
I know, because my husband had a rough time at school, and I'm like, I'm going to try everything in my power to, to
make it easier for your child. That's what every parent wants.
She said he's up to his grade level. He's above his level what he is supposed to be doing. So I thought that was a good sign. Yeah, all righty. Okay. So I think I'm very glad I found this program, because it's like, hey, anything to help them.
Yes.
So
now I'll tell you a little bit about these skill building exercises. Let's take reading, for example. To master reading, the first thing we need to do is build up the smaller components of learning. We need to break it down. Have you ever heard the old joke about how to eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. So when you think about a learning skill, such as reading, think about what that skill is made up of, many smaller components. Covering them all is a bit much for today, but let's talk about a few. When we read, we have to do several things. We have to track the line with our eyes. This is called visual tracking. Problems with visual tracking are very common and very easy to fix. Visual tracking problems are usually just weak eye muscles. That doesn't mean there's a vision problem. It just means the muscles that control the eyes are a little bit weak. And how do we fix that? Well, it's a muscle, so we exercise it. What else do we do? When dealing with dyslexia, we need to deal with directionality, obviously, and we need to deal with visual discrimination, the ability to tell the difference between different shapes or characters. Since directionality is related to the body, it's a thing we call proprioception, knowing where your body is in space. It's also very common for dyslexics to need to build up the auditory skills. Now, this was just recently discovered by science, even though it was known by some educational therapists for a long time. Dyslexia has an auditory component. Strangely, not only is reading about things like visual discrimination, visual tracking, and visual memory, it also has an auditory component, probably because we hear what we read in our mind. Scientists have just discovered that dyslexia has a huge auditory component. Usually, the problem is auditory discrimination. Auditory discrimination is the ability to tell the difference between certain sounds. If a child is weak in this, they have a hard time relating the words they read to the words they hear. And this causes confusion. So we need to fix that. And it's surprisingly easy to do. I can't tell you how wonderful it was to overcome this problem. Imagine how wonderful it will be to have your sanity back. And what about all the time? Once your child overcomes this problem, everything becomes easier. You will save so much time because you won't be wasting all that time struggling with homework or fighting about it. And wouldn't it be great if all those problems went away? They would no longer get in the way of your relationship with your child. Things have just kept getting better for me. Jeanette has long ago graduated and is now enjoying college. She wants to be a nurse, and I'm so happy now that she's successfully moving towards that. How about your child? What do you imagine your child majoring in college? Imagine not being emotionally exhausted all the time. This takes a toll on you. Once it's gone, you'll look back and realize how much stress you were really under. And then there's getting to brag, just a little. Our incredible system makes the learning process easy for your child. Imagine how happy your child will be when you ask if his or her homework is done and he replies with a confident, smiling yes. How much will you enjoy life when you no longer have to fight with your child over homework and can spend that extra time doing more enjoyable things? So, how does this all work? It's easy. I've put all of this into a simple course that you can do at home with your child. You get to save time and money by doing this easily at home. I found the best way to do this is by email. It drips out at a pace that makes it easy to handle. For the first few weeks, I'll send you an email with an exercise in it. You just download it, print it, and do that exercise. After a few weeks, I'll slow the pace down just a bit. You don't want to get overwhelmed, and there's no need to. You really only need to commit about 15 or 20 minutes. You'll spend 15 to 20 minutes most days, 3 to 5 days a week on this, depending on what works best for you. But the good thing is that it won't be long before you're spending less time on homework, so that 15 to 20 minutes will actually save you time, and lots of it. How long will this take? Well, that depends on a couple of things. The first is, how severe is the problem? The second is, how long has it been going on? The longer this sort of thing goes unchecked, the worse it gets. And once it starts getting bad, it gets bad fast. So don't let that happen. Get started today. I also get asked, does it work for adults? Well, sure. Learning is learning, right? Although the exercises are kind of child's play, if you don't mind that, yes, it works for adults. Another great thing about this is, it's something you get to do with your child. You help them fix it, and you are the hero. That's the best part. You get all the cross-lateral motion exercises I put together for you, the ones that prime the pump and get your child ready for the skill-building exercises. Exercises like visual memory exercises. These help your child's ability to hold more things in their mind. This is helpful for reading comprehension. They understand the whole better. And of course, it helps with math skills since they can hold more numbers in their head. Visual tracking exercises. This helps them follow a line with their eyes. This is essential for reading. For dyslexics, building up this skill is one of the things that stops the letters from moving around. Things settle down and are not scary for them anymore. Visual memory manipulation skills. This skill is for moving things around in the mind, building things in the mind, visualizing constructions or stories, seeing it. Visual discrimination skills. This helps the student quickly and easily tell the difference between different letters or numbers, and even sight words. This takes the strain off reading as they recognize symbols rather than struggling. Visual closure skills. This is the mind's ability to fill in the blanks. We do it all the time. We just don't notice it. It's essential for easy reading. Perceptual spatial skills. This develops a better awareness of their body in space, maybe a little less bumping into things. It's essential for learning too. Visual motor integration skills. These are essential for handwriting. And despite the fact that we use computers all day, handwriting is still very important. Plus, when a teacher can read the student's writing, they are more apt to give a better grade and definitely like their work more. Directionality exercises. Obviously, we need to work on this one for dyslexia. This will eliminate a lot of confusion and struggle. Auditory closure exercises. This helps the student decode words. Auditory skills are important. We actually use them when we read because we hear the words in our head. Auditory memory skills. This helps a child relate the words they are reading to the words they know. It connects the two. Following oral directions. I probably don't have to tell you the benefit of this one. And you can do this entire program on your schedule. Doing it at home when you have the time makes it easier for you. It's easy to fit in if you don't have to rush off to a center or a tutor. So what does this all cost? Well, think about this. If you hired one of those learning centers, it would cost you at least $500 a month plus extra expenses. I know a lot of people who have spent over $5,000 a year on learning centers. If you hired a tutor, you're probably paying about $50 an hour for a good one, but that wouldn't really solve your problem. And if you did nothing at all, well, that would cost your child dearly and for a lifetime. That expense is too much to even think about. But you won't pay anywhere near all that. Nope. I want to make this extremely affordable because it's important to me that this gets out to every child who needs it. But wait, there's even more. I'm going to throw in these bonuses. Bonus 1. Video tutorials of the exercises. To make sure you really understand how to do each and every exercise, I'm going to give you a video showing you how. These are valued at $97, but with this program, they're free. Bonus 2, my special homework tips ebook. This book goes over simple things you can do to make homework easier. It's an incredible time saver, and valued at $47, I'm going to give it to you for free with this program. Bonus 3, unlimited email support. That's right, email me anytime with your questions and I'll answer them. As a matter of fact, you already have my email address. Just reply to the email you've already received from me and I'll get your response. Bonus 4, handwriting exercises. I'll throw in special exercises to help develop better handwriting. A must for students. Valued at $27, this is also free with this program. So you'll get all this. The Learning Success Program, which would cost thousands if you could get it in the learning centers. You get bonus 1, the video tutorials valued at $97. Bonus 2, my special homework tips ebook valued at $47. Bonus 3, unlimited email support valued at $197. And bonus 4, my handwriting exercises valued at $27. You get all of this for the very low price you see right below this video.